Slave of your beliefs. Introduction. From the moment we take our first breath, we are born into a world that swiftly weaves its invisible web around us. Like the silent strokes of a painter, it colors our minds with the beliefs, expectations, and limitations of those who came before us. These are not truths of our own making, yet we carry them as though they were etched into our very being. They seep into the fabric of who we believe we are, dictating the rules by which we live, the fears we nurture, and the boundaries we dare not cross. Imagine, for a moment, who you might have been without these beliefs. If no one had told you that you were inadequate, that success was out of reach, or that love must come with pain. What kind of life would you lead if your mind were untouched by these inherited stories? This question is not a comforting one, nor does it come with easy answers. It is a question that shakes the foundations of your identity, because to confront it means to face a truth that many avoid. Most of what you believe about yourself is not yours at all. From the time we are children, our minds are fertile soil. Into this soil, others plant seeds, some with love, others with carelessness, and many more out of their own fears and misunderstandings. Over time, these seeds grow roots, weaving deep into our subconscious. They transform into the walls that confine us, the lens through which we see the world, and the chains that bind our potential. These beliefs become so intertwined with our sense of self that we fail to recognize them as anything other than truth. Consider how a single phrase spoken in passing can shape a life. A parent's casual correction, a teacher's thoughtless remark, or a peer's fleeting judgment can burrow into the mind and take root. A child who is told their ideas are silly may grow up doubting their creativity. Someone scolded for dreaming too big might forever limit their aspirations. Over time, these small moments accumulate, crafting an invisible script that guides decisions, behaviors, and even the paths we believe are available to us. This script is not of your own design, yet it governs you as if it were. The subconscious, like a loyal servant, acts on these beliefs without question, whether they uplift you or tear you down. It seeks evidence to affirm what it has been taught, shaping your reality in its image. If you believe the world is hostile, you will find danger in every shadow. If you believe love is pain, your relationships will mirror that belief. The mind becomes a stage where the same play is performed endlessly, its outcome unchanging because the script remains untouched. But what if you could rewrite it? The greatest tragedy is not the chains themselves, but the fact that we mistake them for who we are. We defend them as though they are sacred truths, even as they confine us. This is just the way I am, we say, unaware that we are guarding the very walls of our own prison. Yet, within this tragedy lies the seed of freedom. The chains are not forged from immutable truths. They are built from stories, and stories can be rewritten. The journey to liberation begins with a single uncomfortable step, questioning everything. Where did this belief come from? Who planted it and why? Is it serving me, or is it holding me back? The answers will not always be easy, nor will they offer immediate relief. They may force you to confront painful memories or long-buried fears, but with each question, the walls weaken. Each moment of doubt creates a crack through which light can pour in. To break free requires courage, the courage to face what you have avoided, to challenge the familiar comfort of your limitations, and to embrace the uncertainty of transformation. It will not happen overnight. It is a process, a gradual peeling away of layers to reveal the untainted essence beneath. That essence, untouched by fear or judgment, is where your true self resides. You are not the sum of what others have told you to be. You are the artist of your own life, holding the brush with which to paint a new picture, one free from the borrowed colors of the past. The canvas is not blank, but it is yours. It always has been. The question is not whether you can create a different story, but whether you are willing to try. So take a step. Start small. Question a single thought, a single belief, and watch as the walls begin to crumble. The weight of your truth is immense, but so is your power to carry it. You are not bound by the past unless you choose to be. The pen is in your hand and the story of your life is still unwritten. The stories we carry within us often remain unseen yet they shape the paths we tread. Imagine for a moment the child you once were, full of wonder and trust, absorbing the world without filters. Every word and every action from those around you became a lesson, an unspoken rule about how life works. And while some of those lessons were nurturing, others etched invisible scars that linger far longer than we realize. Perhaps you grew up believing that love must be earned through perfection, that mistakes make you unworthy, or that your dreams are secondary to the needs of others. These beliefs, born of fleeting moments, a sharp word, a look of disappointment, or even silence when you need reassurance, become the foundation of the narrative you live by. They start small like drops of ink on a page, but over time they seep into every corner of your life, shaping your decisions, your relationships, and your sense of self-worth. Now consider this. The script you've been following isn't unchangeable. It wasn't carved into stone by some unyielding force. You didn't write it with full understanding, nor did you choose its content consciously. It was handed to you line by people who were themselves shaped by scripts they didn't write. This isn't about blame, it's about recognition. The words you live by, the fears that hold you back, the patterns you repeat, none of them are eternal. They can be rewritten, but rewriting is no small task. The mind resists change, clinging fiercely to what it knows, even if it hurts. The familiar, no matter how painful, feels safer than the unknown. To break free, you must look inward with honesty and courage, even when the truths you uncover are difficult to face. You must dare to ask, what parts of me are truly mine? What beliefs have I carried for so long that I've mistaken them for my own voice? These are not easy questions, and the answers often whisper rather than shout. Yet beneath the layers of inherited fears and doubts, there lies a voice that is uniquely yours. It is quieter, but infinitely more honest, waiting patiently for you to listen. To hear it, you must peel back the layers of other people's expectations, the unspoken rules passed down through generations, and the fears that were never truly yours to bear. Imagine a child once told that their best efforts weren't good enough. That small comment, spoken carelessly, plants a seed of doubt. Years later, the adult they've become might achieve great things but feel no joy, haunted by the belief that they must always do more to be worthy. Or think of the countless unspoken lessons a child absorbs when witnessing the struggles of their family, the silence, the sacrifices, the unyielding demands of life. These subtle imprints, invisible to the conscious mind, quietly direct the course of their life. Yet there is a liberating truth. What shaped you does not have to define you. The pain you've carried from your earliest memories, the limitations imposed by the beliefs of others, are not your fate. They are the foundation, but you are the architect. You can build something new upon it, something entirely your own. This isn't about erasing the past, it's about transforming it. To move forward, you must first forgive not just others, but yourself. Forgive yourself for the years spent living by rules that weren't yours, for the patterns you repeated without knowing why, for the fears you've allowed to control you. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning the pain or forgetting it. It means releasing its hold on you, and understanding that those who shaped you did the best they could with what they had, even if it wasn't enough. Healing is not linear, nor is it quick. There will be days when the old wounds feel fresh, when the doubts resurface, and the fear seems insurmountable. But each time you challenge a belief that limits you, you take a step closer to freedom. Each time you choose to act from a place of love rather than fear, you rewrite the script. Slowly, the chains of inherited pain begin to loosen, and you discover that you are no longer bound by what once seemed unchangeable. You are not the mistakes of your parents or the weight of their unhealed wounds. You are not the echoes of criticism or the shadow of expectations you could never meet. You are the author of your own story, capable of crafting a narrative where your past informs but does not dictate your future. It takes courage to face the truths that have lived in your shadows. But the reward is profound. When you begin to question the beliefs you've lived by, you uncover a new sense of self, a self unburdened by the need for perfection, unafraid of love, unshaken by fear. This is the journey of reclaiming your power, of stepping into the fullness of who you are meant to be. Your past may have shaped you, but it does not own you. You are free to choose a new story, one word, one step, and one moment of courage at a time. Imagine your mind as a vast storage system, a repository of every belief and thought ever handed to you since childhood. These ideas don't ask if they're helpful or harmful. They simply settle in, becoming the unseen architects of your life. If you were told as a child that the world is dangerous, that belief now shapes your choices. If you learned that love is earned through perfection, every small mistake likely feels like a catastrophe. And the most unsettling truth: these programs operate so deeply within you that their influence often escapes your notice. Consider how you react to everyday situations. Why does a simple criticism ignite anger or insecurity? Why does guilt creep in when you pause to rest? Why do you remain stuck in relationships or patterns you know are no longer serving you? These behaviors are not random. They are orchestrated by the beliefs embedded in you long ago, beliefs you accepted before you even understood the power they would hold over your life. The subconscious is not your enemy. Its purpose is protection, to create a sense of safety in an unpredictable world. Yet, this safety often comes at a cost. If your subconscious equates risk with danger, it will quietly sabotage your efforts to change, to grow, to reach for more. Its methods are subtle, its resistance cloaked in seemingly external obstacles. But the real barriers lie within. Changing these deep-seated patterns is no easy feat. Habits, after all, are built on the foundations of your beliefs. You may decide to save money, to exercise, to pursue your dreams, but often find yourself pulled back into old routines, as if by an unseen force. That force is your subconscious clinging to the comfort of the familiar. It doesn't act out of malice, but out of a misguided effort to protect you from the discomfort of the unknown. So how do you rewrite a script written before you even knew there was one? The first step is awareness. You must uncover the beliefs running your life, bringing them out of the shadows and into the light. Ask yourself, what do I truly believe about love, success, or my own worth? Dive deeper than surface answers. Explore the echoes of words spoken to you as a child, the recurring patterns you've unconsciously followed. Once you identify these limiting beliefs, challenge them. This is not a simple or swift process. The subconscious resists change, clinging tightly to the patterns it knows. You'll need to introduce new ideas, repeating them until they take root and replace the old ones. This is not unlike reshaping a river's path, a slow, deliberate effort, but entirely possible. Remember, your subconscious doesn't distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. Use this to your advantage. Visualize the life you want as if it's already yours. Speak to yourself as though you are already the person you aspire to be. Each thought, each visualization, and each positive affirmation is a small but significant drop in the vast ocean of your mind, gradually shifting its currents. Fear is one of the most persistent programs in this inner landscape. It doesn't announce itself with loud proclamations, but whispers, weaving itself into your thoughts, your decisions, and your movements through life. Sometimes it disguises itself as logic or prudence, convincing you to stay where you are because venturing into the unknown feels too risky. But is it truly safety, or a gilded cage that keeps you from exploring the fullness of life? Fear is not a villain, it is a misguided protector. It roots itself in early experiences, in moments when you were too young to question its validity. It grows quietly, entangling itself in your every choice, justifying its presence with a steady stream of what-ifs. Yet, fear doesn't write happy endings. Its stories are cautionary, keeping you small and confined. What if you choose to view fear as a signal rather than an enemy? Every dread is the result of an unfulfilled need or an unhealed hurt. Maybe it's the fear of failing because you were only commended for your perfection as a child, or the dread of being rejected, which stems from the idea that love needs to be earned. The first step to taking back your control is realizing where your fear originates. The bravery to act despite fear is what truly transforms a situation, not the lack of dread. You break the hold of fear every time you take a step forward, even if your hands are shaking. It won't be an easy or quick voyage. Fear has been establishing a solid foundation in your thoughts for years. But you lessen its power with each deliberate decision to overcome it. A society's ingrained views can be just as widespread. Instead of being shouted out loud, these teachings are conveyed through raised eyebrows, acquiescence, dissatisfied looks, and silence. Your perception of happiness, success, and value is shaped by them. A route may be set for you not because it fulfills you, but because it conforms to expectations. But uniformity has a price. Pursuing acceptance or conforming to social expectations might cause you to lose touch with who you really are. Society's regulations frequently serve to uphold order rather than personal happiness. To escape, you have to challenge them. This is no easy undertaking. It calls for a readiness to accept the discomfort of forging your own path, to deal with criticism, and to risk rejection. This is where the truth lies, though. Society does not have complete control over you. It is only there because you allow it to. You can take back your life by regaining that power. You become an inspiration to those who are looking for the same freedom when you put your own rhythm ahead of dancing to the tunes of others and choose authenticity above approval. In the quiet moments of your life, have you ever paused to wonder, what parts of me are truly mine? Perhaps it's the way you strive for success, the way you give and receive love, or the way you present yourself to the world. Maybe it's even deeper, the belief that your worth is tied to productivity or that vulnerability is a weakness. These thoughts are not your own. They are echoes of voices you may have absorbed long ago, reshaping the contours of your identity until the real you is hidden beneath layers of inherited expectations. There is a prison more confining than iron bars, one that cannot be seen, yet holds immense power over your life. It's a prison you've built within your own mind. These walls are not made of stone, but of beliefs, fears, and unmet expectations. The most insidious part is that many of us live our entire lives unaware that we are captives. We mistake the constraints of this invisible cage for the boundaries of reality, not realizing how much of our world is shaped by ideas we never chose. Have you ever felt that no matter what you achieve, it's never enough? That gnawing hunger to prove yourself, to do more, to be better. It's not your voice urging you forward. It's the whisper of an implanted belief, a script handed to you by others, parents, teachers, and society. Over time, these whispers grow louder, guiding your every move like an unseen puppet master. The subconscious mind becomes your jailer, with limiting beliefs as the chains that bind you. You become your own strictest warden, enforcing rules that keep you stuck in place. This mental prison feels safe in a way. Its walls are familiar, predictable, and comforting in their own twisted logic. Beyond them lies the unknown, vast and terrifying. Stepping outside means risking failure, rejection, and the disorienting realization that the world doesn't always bend to your will. But here's the truth. The fear you feel is not real danger. It's simply the trembling of your soul standing at the edge of freedom. To dismantle this prison, you must first recognize its architecture. Every wall, every chain, every lock is built from a belief you've accepted as truth. Ask yourself, whose rules am I following? Whose voice is shaping my thoughts? You may find that these beliefs trace back to your childhood, to the expectations of parents, or to the pressures of a society that values conformity over authenticity. Letting go of these inherited ideas is not easy. It can feel like losing a part of yourself, like tearing away something familiar and safe. But what you're shedding isn't truly you. It's the mask you've worn for so long, a facade designed to meet someone else's standards. Religion and spirituality too can form invisible cages. From a young age, many are taught to see the divine through rigid rules and doctrines, and to measure their worth by their adherence to ideals they didn't choose. The idea of watching and judging God often instills more fear than comfort. How can you feel free when every misstep is weighed against an impossible standard? How can you feel worthy when you are taught that your humanity is a flaw to be overcome? True spirituality should not enslave. It should liberate. It should not demand that you shrink yourself to fit someone else's image of perfection. Yet so often, we find ourselves bowing to gods of paper, constructs built from dogma, traditions, and unyielding rules. These false gods thrive on our fear, on our need for approval, on our desperate desire to belong to something greater than ourselves. But they crumble the moment we stop feeding them with our compliance. In their place, we can build something authentic, a connection to the divine that embraces our imperfections, celebrates our humanity, and radiates love instead of fear. Guilt is another form of imprisonment. It clings to us like a shadow, whispering incessantly about what we did wrong, what we should have done better, what we failed to become. Over time, we accept it as part of us, forgetting to question its origins. But guilt is not a natural state. It is born of judgment passed by others, by society, and eventually by ourselves. It convinces us that we are unworthy and that we must carry the weight of our mistakes forever. Yet guilt is not a burden we are meant to bear. It is a mirror held up to us, often by those who seek to control us. Freedom begins when we dare to look beyond that mirror. It starts when we realize that we have always held the key to our liberation. We are not bound by our past, by the expectations of others, or by the voices that try to dictate who we should be. The act of questioning, of asking who we truly are and what we genuinely believe, is the first step toward breaking free. And though the journey may be uncomfortable, even painful at times, each step brings you closer to the truth. You were never meant to live in fear. You were never meant to be small. The prison walls crumble the moment you stop reinforcing them with doubt and hesitation. What lies beyond is a life rooted in love, authenticity, and a deep connection to the essence of who you are. It's not a quick process, nor is it easy, but it's worth every moment. Because in the end, freedom is not about what you leave behind. It's about the truth you uncover and the life you finally allow yourself to live. From the moment we take our first steps in life, we are taught that mistakes come with a price. They aren't just external. They leave a mark on us, or so we're led to believe. Every misstep, every moment of disobedience is painted as a blemish on our soul, something to be redeemed if we ever wish to feel whole again. I once knew someone who carried such a burden of guilt that it became an inseparable part of them. It had been so long since they first felt it that they couldn't even remember its origin. Yet the weight of it showed in their voice, in their eyes, in the quiet sadness they couldn't explain. One day they shared their story with me. As a teenager, they had faced a decision far too heavy for someone so young. They did the best they could with what they knew, yet the world around them did not see it that way. Society, religion, the people closest to them, none of it offered understanding. They were judged in silence, and that silent condemnation became their own. Years passed, and each time they looked in the mirror, they didn't see themselves. They saw only the person they believed had failed. Guilt has a way of trapping us in the worst moments of our lives, as if the entirety of who we are could be reduced to a single decision. But are we truly defined by what we did on our darkest day? Why do we measure ourselves by our errors, instead of the courage it takes to rise from them? The answer lies in the presence of judgment, a force as relentless as it is invisible. Judgment often isn't ours. It's inherited. It comes from rules we've absorbed, expectations we've never questioned, and voices that shaped us before we even knew how to defend ourselves. We're told that morality is a guiding light, but more often it blinds us. It traps us in rigid molds, dictating that to be good is to fit within their lines. When we inevitably fail, because failure is part of being human, judgment sharpens into guilt, and guilt becomes the chain that binds us. This chain isolates us. It convinces us that we are unworthy of love or forgiveness, both from others and from ourselves. It whispers that we are irreparably broken. But what no one teaches us is that guilt doesn't have to be a life sentence. It can be a signal, a reminder that we've strayed from our values. A signal, however, is not a destination. To free ourselves from guilt, we must first ask whose judgment we're living under. Is this guilt truly ours, or does it belong to someone else? Confronting this question requires immense courage. It means dismantling beliefs we've carried for as long as we can remember. Perhaps we were taught that to make a mistake is to lose our worth. Perhaps we were told that only perfection deserves love. But when we begin to question these narratives, something extraordinary happens. we discover that judgment is not universal. What one person condemns, another might embrace with compassion. What one culture sees as a failure, another might see as a necessary lesson. The path to liberation begins with self-forgiveness. This isn't about excusing what we've done, but about acknowledging it, learning from it, and moving forward. It means looking into the mirror and seeing beyond the blemishes we once believed were permanent. We are not the sum of our worst decisions. We are the effort we make to grow, to heal, and to live authentically. Guilt can transform into a teacher, but only if we let it. The next time it weighs on you, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? The moment guilt turns into understanding, it loses its power to hold you captive. It becomes a step forward, not a wall. And when you allow yourself to let it go, you'll find something remarkable. Behind the distorted reflection of who you thought you were lies the truest version of yourself, one that has always been there, waiting for you to see it. Life has a way of planting invisible beliefs in us, seeds sown in moments of vulnerability. A harsh word, a look of disappointment, a broken promise. These small moments take root, growing into unseen forces that shape us. Often, we don't even realize they're there, yet they dictate how we live, how we love, how we dream. They tell us we're not enough, that we'll never be enough. And as long as they remain hidden, they hold power over us. But here's the truth. You are not the shadows that haunt you. You are not the pain you've carried, nor the chains you've worn. Each time you dare to confront a shadow, you step closer to the light. Each time you question a belief that limits you, you reclaim a part of yourself. The process isn't easy. It demands patience, courage, and a willingness to see yourself as you truly are. But with every step, the darkness loses its grip, and in its place grows something new. Possibility, freedom, and the quiet understanding that you were never broken. You were always whole, waiting to remember. There's a moment in life when the relentless pursuit of perfection feels like carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. It tightens its grip until you can barely breathe, whispering that your worth is measured by how flawlessly you perform and how seamlessly you fit into a mold designed by others. But what if you stopped? What if for just a moment you asked yourself, who am I trying to please? Who am I without all this? You might discover that the only person who truly matters, the only opinion that should guide you, is your own. And maybe, for the first time, you'd allow yourself to let go of the burden, step off the stage, and simply be. The world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more authenticity. It craves people who dare to show up as they are, scars and all, who live with open hearts even when they don't fit the mold. What makes you human isn't what you achieve, but how you love, how you forgive yourself, and how you find the courage to remain true to who you are in a world that constantly demands otherwise. Yet so often we don't live this truth. Unseen forces, silent, insidious, pull the strings behind our actions. These are the beliefs that take root without our consent, whispered into our subconscious so long ago that we mistake their voices for our own. They lurk in the shadows, feeding off our doubts and fears and draining our energy. These parasitic beliefs are so deeply ingrained that they become the lens through which we view the world. Think of how many times you've told yourself, I'm not good enough. I can't rest because resting means I've failed. It's too late for me to change. These thoughts seem harmless, even rational at times, but every time they surface, they chip away at your confidence, anchoring you in a state of perpetual exhaustion. Like a parasite clinging to its host, it thrives on your attention, growing stronger with every repetition. The most dangerous part is that they don't announce themselves. They don't show up with banners declaring, I'm here to sabotage your potential. Instead, they masquerade as truth, governing your decisions and shaping your reality. If you believe the world is a dangerous place, you'll see threats where none exist. If you're convinced you'll never measure up, even the highest praise will feel like a lie. These beliefs don't ask for your permission. They simply take hold, shaping your life in ways you don't even realize. Once I spoke to someone who was perpetually drained, even when they weren't doing much. They thought it was just life being demanding. But as we dug deeper, the truth emerged. They were trapped by the belief that rest equaled weakness. Every time they tried to pause, that belief lashed out, demanding they keep going, whispering that stopping was a failure. And so, even in silence, their mind waged a war they couldn't win. Beliefs like these don't just rob you of energy. They steal your peace, your potential, and your joy. They are the silent architects of your limitations. If you believe you aren't worthy of love, you'll settle for relationships that diminish you. If you think success requires endless suffering, you'll sabotage moments of happiness because your mind will convince you something's wrong if you're not struggling. But here's the truth. These beliefs only have power because you give it to them. They're not immutable laws of the universe. They're stories written by someone else, inherited from a parent, a teacher, or society. Maybe someone told you to be realistic when you shared your dreams, or perhaps you watched adults around you battle their own fears and absorb their struggles as your own. These beliefs aren't yours by nature. You weren't born with them. They were planted when you were vulnerable, growing quietly, dictating your choices ever since. To reclaim your power, you must first identify these intruders. Pay attention to the thoughts that make you feel small, exhausted, or stuck. Write them down, examine them closely, and ask, is this really true? Where did this idea come from? You might find that the belief you must always work hard to deserve success comes from a parent who struggled with scarcity, or the conviction that you're not enough stems from a childhood wound you never fully processed. Once you see these beliefs for what they are, stories, not truths, you can begin to rewrite them, replace them with ideas that nourish you. If you've always believed rest is a weakness, tell yourself, my value isn't tied to what I do, but to who I am. If you think change is impossible, remind yourself, I always have the power to choose a new path. These affirmations may feel awkward at first, but every time you repeat them, you're planting new seeds, watering a different narrative. The process won't happen overnight. These beliefs are stubborn, clinging to the dark corners of your mind where they've lived unchallenged for years. But with each choice to question them, each act of defiance against their control, they lose a bit of their grip. Over time, you'll find that they no longer define you. You were not meant to live under the rule of these invisible chains. They are not part of who you are. They're passengers you never invited on your journey, and now you have the power to release them. When you do, you'll rediscover something you may have forgotten, a lightness, a clarity, a strength that was always within you, waiting to be reclaimed. Money often feels like a fleeting shadow, slipping through your fingers no matter how hard you try to grasp it. But what if the real challenge isn't the money itself, but the invisible strings that tether your mind to a cycle of scarcity and struggle? These strings, beliefs you never chose, are often inherited, absorbed like air from the environment you grew up in. Perhaps you watched your parents argue over unpaid bills, or learned to see life as an unrelenting fight to make ends meet. The words you heard as a child, like, money doesn't grow on trees, became truths etched into your subconscious, shaping how you view the world. Scarcity then ceases to be just a circumstance. It becomes a way of life. It colors every decision, every opportunity, and every setback. It whispers that there's never enough, that you must hold tightly to what little you have, or risk losing everything. I once knew a woman who worked tirelessly for years to save a significant amount of money, yet instead of feeling secure, she was gripped by relentless anxiety. Every time she checked her balance, a small voice in her mind warned, "This won't last. Something bad will happen." And sure enough, it did. An unexpected expense or a sudden crisis always seemed to drain her savings. It wasn't her financial plan that failed her. It was her beliefs. Deep down, she didn't think stability was something she could truly have. Her mind ensured her reality conformed to that belief. This is the dangerous trap of scarcity thinking. It doesn't just affect your wallet, it infiltrates every corner of your life. Scarcity whispers that there isn't enough love, success, or time to go around. It fuels comparison, competition, and dissatisfaction, even when you achieve your goals. It turns life into an endless race where, no matter how fast you run, you never reach the finish line. Breaking free from this cycle begins with a simple, yet often uncomfortable act: questioning the beliefs that keep you bound. What do you truly believe about money, about success, about your worth? When you dig deep, you might find that you've unconsciously associated money with pain, struggle, or guilt. Maybe you were taught to see wealth as selfish or corrupt. These beliefs, though they may not be your own, have taken root and grown unchecked. But here's the truth. You can choose to let them go. You don't have to carry what was never truly yours to begin with. Challenging these inherited beliefs takes courage. If you believe money is hard to come by, look for examples that prove otherwise. If you think you're undeserving of abundance, ask yourself why. Who decided your worth? And why should you accept a narrative planted by someone else? Change isn't comfortable, but it's necessary. As long as these beliefs operate in the shadows, they will continue to rule your life. True abundance isn't about the size of your bank account, it's about shifting your perspective. It's the ability to see opportunities where others see limitations, to believe in your capacity to create, and to understand that the world isn't a pie with finite slices, but a limitless flow of potential. Changing your mindset doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means seeing it through a different lens. It doesn't mean spending recklessly or pretending problems don't exist. It means trusting that you have the power to face them and come out stronger. The next time you catch yourself thinking there's never enough, pause. Is that really true? Or is it just your financial pattern speaking for you? You might discover that scarcity isn't in your circumstances but in your perception. When you shift that perception, everything changes. You stop chasing and start creating. You stop surviving and start thriving. The cost of scarcity is steep. It robs you of peace, fulfillment, and the freedom to live fully. But the price of breaking free, that's priceless. It starts with a choice, one you make every day, to take back control of your beliefs. You're not a prisoner of your past or your patterns. You are the architect of your future. Abundance in all its forms begins when you decide to reclaim it. Money is not emotional, but how you handle it is deeply tied to your emotions. Fear makes you cling to it or avoid it altogether. Guilt drives you to spend it recklessly, as if trying to rid yourself of something burdensome. A lack of self-esteem might lead you to use money as a way to fill an internal void, buying things that offer fleeting relief, but never truly address the root of the problem. The issue isn't in your bank account, it's in your mind. Perhaps the most damaging belief of all is the idea that money is beyond your control, dictated by the whims of luck, the economy, or others. Here's the truth. Money responds to your decisions. It's not the villain of your story, nor is it the hero. It's a tool, one that reflects how you think and act. To wield it wisely, you must first uncover what holds you back. Ask yourself, what do I really believe about money? Let your thoughts flow without judgment. Perhaps you think money is hard to earn, that it only brings problems, or that you're inherently bad at managing it. Once you've acknowledged these beliefs, dig deeper. Where did they come from? A heated family argument? A dismissive remark? A moment of hardship? These beliefs weren't born within you, they were learned, and what's learned can be unlearned. Many people sabotage their financial well-being because they tie their sense of worth to money. If you feel you don't deserve abundance, you'll unconsciously make choices to confirm that belief. This creates a cycle. You doubt yourself, act accordingly, and reinforce the idea that financial success is out of reach. Breaking free begins with one decision, to believe that you are capable and deserving. Money doesn't have to be a source of stress. It can work for you, not against you. Transforming your relationship with money requires more than budgeting or saving. It's about shifting the intention behind your choices. Before your next financial decision, pause and ask, does this strengthen my limiting beliefs, or does it help me build a healthier relationship with money? You might find that skipping an impulsive purchase feels more empowering than indulging in it, or that delaying an investment out of fear isn't the cautious choice you thought it was. The emotions tied to money, whether greed or guilt, can create a dysfunctional relationship with your finances. Greed isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's a subtle, endless craving for more, rooted not in true need, but in a desperate search for security. And guilt. It whispers that you don't deserve what you have, or that enjoying your success makes you selfish. Both emotions, though seemingly different, have a common effect. They paralyze you and rob you of peace. Give it some thought. What makes it seem like there's never enough? Why do you think you're not worthy of having plenty? These emotions frequently have their roots in childhood and are influenced by the events and words of others in your immediate vicinity. Perhaps you heard sayings like, "Money doesn't grow on trees" growing up, or witnessed financial hardships that affected you for a long time. Until you choose to change them, these tales serve as the unseen scripts that direct your behavior. In actuality, your relationship with money shouldn't be characterized by guilt or greed. Rather, view it as a way to develop, share, and construct a life that is consistent with your principles. The power of money depends on how you utilize it. It is neither intrinsically good nor bad. It ceases to be a cause of worry and turns into an ally when you give it a purpose, whether that purpose is to support others, invest in experiences, or pursue worthwhile objectives. It's difficult to overcome financial constraints. It requires self-reflection, endurance, and the guts to challenge strongly held views. However, every action, no matter how minor, brings you one step closer to having a more positive and satisfying relationship with money. It's not about picking between ambition and modesty or between wealth and contentment. It's about realizing that the mind is where abundance starts. The stories you've been taught no longer hold you back when you believe in your own value, and you begin to build the life you've always wanted. The next step is to act. Beliefs don't change simply through reflection. They shift when you make decisions that challenge them. If you've always thought you can't save money because you don't earn enough, try setting aside even a small amount every month, no matter how little. If you believe success is for others, seek out examples of people who started with circumstances similar to yours and overcame them. Action, no matter how small, breaks the inertia and proves that change is possible. Poverty isn't your destiny. It's a narrative that you have the power to rewrite. But to do so, you must summon the courage to confront the limiting ideas that have held you captive. You must accept that you deserve more. You need to take risks that you once avoided. The comfort of the known will always tempt you to stay where you are, but each time you choose to act, to believe in your ability to change, you break the chains that have bound you. Abundance is not just financial. It's mental, emotional, and spiritual. It's the ability to see possibilities where you once saw only limits, to trust yourself even when conditions aren't ideal, and to create a life that mirrors who you truly are. Poverty's grip can only persist if you give it power. Today you have the opportunity to set yourself free, because the real cost of mediocrity isn't what you lose, it's what you never dared to gain. The past holds a weight we often fail to recognize. It's an invisible backpack filled with memories, emotions, and wounds that, even if we try to ignore them, continue to influence every step we take. No matter how hard we try to move forward, the past finds a way to slip into the present, shaping our decisions, our relationships, and our self-perception. But here's the question we rarely ask: when will we carry something we can no longer change? Trauma is an echo of the past that never fully fades away. Whether it stems from a major event or a series of small accumulated pains, it leaves scars beneath the surface, silently governing our lives. Trauma often becomes the lens through which we view the world. If you've experienced abandonment, you might see rejection even where it doesn't exist. If you've been humiliated, you might seek validation in every interaction. And so, the past not only shapes how we interpret the present, but also how we construct our memories. A story shared with me years ago was about a woman who grew up in a home filled with shouting and violence. As a child, she learned to walk on tiptoes to avoid provoking her father's anger. But what she didn't know was that, as an adult, this same strategy would become the way she interacted with the world. At work, she avoided giving her opinion for fear of criticism. In her relationships, she bent over backward to avoid upsetting her partner, even at the cost of her own desires. She lived in constant self-protection, trapped in a pattern that had been born in her childhood but continued to rule her adult life. Trauma doesn't just disappear with time. It doesn't vanish because we choose to ignore it. It settles in our body, in our mind, in the way we are, doing so quietly enough that often we don't even recognize it as a problem. It's only when we stop to honestly examine our patterns, our emotions, and our automatic responses that we begin to notice its presence. But this recognition, though painful, is the first step toward liberation. Freeing yourself from the past doesn't mean forgetting it. It doesn't mean pretending it never hurt. It means facing it head-on, with all its weight and truth, and deciding that it no longer has power over you. This is an act of bravery because confronting your trauma is like opening a wound that never fully healed. But it's also an act of self-love, because by doing so, you reclaim your life, your present, and your right to be free. Ask yourself, what parts of my past am I still carrying? Maybe it's a relationship that ended badly, a childhood full of lack, a mistake you can't forgive yourself for. Maybe it's a conversation that never happened, an "I love you" you never heard, or an "I'm sorry" you always waited for. Whatever it is, identify that wound, because you can't heal what you're unwilling to acknowledge. The next step is to explore how this past manifests in your present life. Are you repeating patterns that no longer serve you? Do you hesitate before taking action out of fear of reopening old wounds? Do you punish yourself for mistakes you made years ago? These are signs that the past is still very much present, not because it has inherent power, but because you're allowing it to. And here's the truth. You can't change what happened, but you can choose how it affects you from this moment on. Releasing trauma is not an event, but a process, a series of small decisions made each day to let go, to forgive, to move forward. You may not forget what happened, but you can decide it no longer defines who you are. The pain may not vanish entirely, but you can learn to see it as part of your story, not your identity. Maybe you can't control what was done to you, but you can control what you do with it. Liberation also means recognizing that trauma is not your fault, but healing is your responsibility. This isn't unfair, it's empowering because it means you have the power to transform your life, to rewrite your narrative, to take the pain that once broke you and turn it into the foundation of your strength. It won't be easy, but it's possible. And with each step you take toward that liberation, you resist the chains of the past. I want you to think about something you could do if you were no longer defined by your past. Maybe you'd start that project you've been putting off. Maybe you'd dare to love with an open heart. Maybe, for the first time in years, you'd feel light enough to dream without limits. That life you imagine is not a fantasy. It's a possibility, and it's waiting for you to claim it. The past can be a prison, but you hold the key. To free yourself doesn't mean forgetting. It means stopping the cycle of carrying weight that no longer serves you. It won't be an easy journey, but every step you take will be a victory, because every time you choose to face your pain, every time you choose to heal, you're telling the world and yourself that you are stronger than anything that ever tried to break you. That strength, that freedom, is your true legacy. Unresolved pain doesn't just fade with time. It doesn't disappear because you choose to ignore it or bury it deep within yourself. Instead, it lingers in the shadows, quietly waiting for the moment when it can resurface. It may show up unexpectedly in a relationship that mirrors the same destructive patterns of the past, or in decisions that repeat the financial mistakes of your family. It can even present itself in a constant, nagging feeling of inadequacy, despite outward appearances that everything is going fine. What makes it even worse is that while you ignore it, this pain continues to disguise itself, convincing you that what you're experiencing now is just inevitable. But why does the past hold such power over us? Why does it continue to shape our present? The answer lies in the way our brains are wired. We are creatures of pattern-seeking, built to protect ourselves from danger. When something hurts us deeply, our mind works to understand what happened and how to avoid it in the future. If you've suffered rejection, your mind might convince you that the best way to protect yourself is by avoiding vulnerability altogether. If abandonment leaves its mark, you might unconsciously sabotage relationships before they have a chance to repeat the same painful pattern. It's a defense mechanism, but also a trap. In its attempt to protect you, your mind traps you in the very cycle of pain you're trying to escape. The first question you need to ask yourself is, what parts of my past am I reliving today? Maybe you've noticed that your current relationships reflect dynamics you grew up with, dynamics you never questioned. Perhaps you've realized that your decisions are motivated more by fear than by desire. It's not easy to see these patterns, and even harder to face them. It requires looking inward, with brutal honesty. It requires admitting that the problem isn't always out there but within you and the way you interpret what happens. Breaking free from this cycle doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen or erasing it from your memory. It means understanding that your history does not have to define your future. Yes, what happened to you was real. Yes, it hurt. But you are no longer the person who lived through those experiences. You have grown, you have learned, and you now have the power to make different choices. To do this, you must challenge the stories the pain created. If you've always believed that love hurts because that's all you've ever known, ask yourself, is that really true? Or is it just a story you keep telling yourself? Escaping the endless loop of unresolved pain demands action. Every time you confront a fear you once avoided, every time you make a decision that goes against the pattern your mind would usually dictate, you are creating a new possibility. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. You are stepping into the unknown, and your mind finds comfort in the familiar, even if it's painful. But each small step toward something different is an act of courage, a reminder that you are not bound to repeat the past. Ask yourself this: if I were not limited by my past, what would I choose today? This simple question holds the power to open a door you may not have known was there. Your future is not written. It's a blank canvas, waiting for you to decide what to paint. Every time you let go of the weight of the past, every time you choose not to let your wounds dictate your actions, you are claiming that canvas as your own. The scars of abuse, the trauma that shapes your identity, are often invisible to others but incredibly heavy on your soul. These experiences don't just affect you at the moment, they build the foundation of your identity, dictating how you see yourself, how you perceive the world, and how you allow others to treat you. Abuse takes away more than just your present. It tries to steal your future as well. I remember a conversation with someone who had been carrying the weight of emotional abuse from their childhood for years. What they said to me stayed with me deeply. They said, "Everything that goes wrong, I always think it's because I'm not enough." This simple phrase encapsulated the power of abuse. It doesn't just hurt you, it convinces you that the pain is your fault and that you deserve it. And when you believe that, it becomes easy to construct an identity based on insufficiency, insecurity, and fear. Abuse has the power to break something within you, something you may not even realize has been broken. It could be your ability to trust others, your self-esteem, your sense of safety in the world. But the most devastating impact of all is how these experiences infiltrate your mind, rewiring how you think and feel. You might come to believe that love always hurts because those who were supposed to protect you were the ones who harmed you. Or perhaps you've internalized the idea that you have to constantly prove your worth because the abuse made you feel like you were never enough as you were. Abuse distorts your boundaries too. If you grew up in an environment where your emotions were dismissed or punished, you might have learned that expressing your feelings is dangerous. If you were made to believe that your needs didn't matter, you might have gotten used to putting everyone else before yourself. Over time, these patterns turn into habits, and those habits become your identity. You adapt, you remain silent, you give in, because that's what you learn to do to survive. But here's the truth the abuse is trying to hide from you. What happened to you does not define who you are. No matter how deep the wounds, no matter how long you've carried that weight, you are not the words they spoke to you, nor the actions they took against you. You are so much more than that. To rediscover that truth, you must face the impact these experiences have had on your life and your self-perception. The first step is recognizing how the abuse has shaped your identity. Ask yourself, what do I believe about myself that might have been born from these experiences? Perhaps you believe that you don't deserve love, that you must always prove your worth, or that being vulnerable is a mistake. These beliefs are not universal truths. They are echoes of the abuse, fragments of a past you haven't fully healed. The next step is to question these beliefs. If you grew up thinking you weren't enough, ask yourself, where did this idea come from? Who made me feel this way? And then challenge it. Is it true that I'm not enough? Or is this just a narrative that was imposed on me? This process won't be easy. because it requires confronting wounds you've carried for so long. But it's also incredibly liberating. Every time you challenge one of these beliefs, you reclaim a part of yourself that the abuse tried to take from you. Healing from abuse also means rebuilding your boundaries. This doesn't mean building impenetrable walls, but learning how to protect yourself from a place of self-love, not fear. It means giving yourself permission to say no when something doesn't feel right, to ask for what you need, and to express what you feel without fear of rejection. Every time you set a healthy boundary, you reaffirm your worth, reminding yourself that you deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. One of the hardest parts of healing is forgiving yourself, not for what they did to you, but for how you reacted in order to survive. Perhaps you judge yourself for staying quiet, for letting them hurt you, for not leaving sooner. But here's the truth. You did the best you could with what you knew at the time. You survived, and that alone is an act of bravery. Abuse will try to convince you that you are broken, but you are not. The wounds are real, but so is your ability to heal them. What happened to you is a chapter in your story, but it doesn't have to be the final one. Every time you choose to look at yourself with compassion, every time you decide that you deserve better, you are writing a new chapter, one where abuse no longer has the final word. Ask yourself, who would I be if I didn't carry the weight of these experiences? That person is already inside you, waiting to be rediscovered. Healing will never be easy, but with every step you take toward liberation, you are resisting the chains of the past and reclaiming your life. The invisible chains, those beliefs, those traumatic memories, are the heaviest ones to bear, but they are not your true identity. You can rewrite the story. The first step is to see these chains for what they are. Not truths, but the walls built by your pain, walls you have the power to break down. The path to transformation begins with challenging the beliefs that have shaped your life for so long. Ask yourself, is this really true? What evidence do I have that this belief holds up? Maybe you'll recall moments that contradict these limiting ideas, times when others showed you love, achievements you've earned, or moments when you found the courage to step forward. These experiences don't erase the pain of the past, but they serve as powerful reminders that your identity is not defined by past wounds. Breaking free from these chains is not a linear process. There will be days when it feels like you've made great strides, and others when the old beliefs resurface. But each time you choose to question them, each time you act from a place of self-love instead of fear, you weaken their hold. It's a slow process, but one that leads to profound transformation. Imagine, just for a moment, a life free from these chains. What would you do if you no longer believed that love always ends in pain? How would you act if you didn't think success required suffering? How would you treat yourself if you truly believed you deserved happiness? This life is not a distant dream, it is a real possibility. But to step into it, you must release what no longer serves you. These painful beliefs seem invincible because they've been with you for so long that it's hard to imagine life without them. But they are not part of your essence. They are part of your story. And like any story, you have the power to decide how it ends. Releasing the wounded inner child is a vital step in your inner reconstruction. Deep within each of us is a child who carries the wounds of the past, no matter how many years have passed. That child may have learned to protect itself by building walls around its heart, but the very walls that once kept you safe now separate you from your true self. The wounded child doesn't speak in words. It manifests through patterns, fears, and choices made unconsciously. If you've ever felt hesitant to trust, that's the child speaking. If you avoid success or love, it's that child whispering, "You don't deserve it." The wounded child doesn't seek to punish you. It seeks to protect you from the pain it once experienced. I remember someone who, despite having everything on the surface, a stable job, good friends, and personal goals, always felt a constant emptiness. There was something missing, something undefined. One day, during our conversation, they shared a memory from childhood, hiding in their room during their parents' fights, feeling like any noise they made would make things worse. That child, curled up in silence, never left them. It grew up believing it had to minimize itself to avoid conflict, that its voice wasn't important, and that its very existence was a problem. The beliefs formed in childhood continue to shape their life, fueling fears of being seen, of occupying space, of being their true self. Releasing this wounded child begins with an act of courage, acknowledging its presence. Ask yourself, what moments from my childhood still resonate in my current life? Perhaps you remember hurtful words, absences that left scars, and expectations you couldn't meet. These memories are not just the past. They are roots that feed the beliefs you hold about yourself and the world. You cannot heal what you refuse to face. Looking back is not a sign of weakness, but an act of self-love. When you connect with your inner child, something powerful happens. You stop blaming it for the pain it carries and begin to see it with compassion. That child didn't choose the pain, loneliness, or shame. It did the best it could to survive in a world that felt too big and too frightening. As an adult, you now have the ability to give that child what it never received: validation, comfort, and unconditional love. The next step is to listen to what that child needs to say. This isn't always easy. The language of the inner child isn't rational. It's emotional. It can show up as a knot in your throat, an unexpected tear, or a resistance to remembering. But each time you choose to listen instead of ignore, you create a safe space for that part of you to be heard. Ask, what do you need from me? What couldn't you express then? The answer might be as simple as, I need you here. Releasing the wounded child also involves rewriting the stories that were created in response to the pain. If that child grew up thinking it wasn't enough, it's your job now to remind it that it always was. If it believed its worth depended on what it did, teach it that its existence is enough. Changing these stories doesn't happen overnight. It requires repetition, patience, and love. But every time you choose self-care over self-punishment, you break old patterns and create new ones. Healing is not a linear journey. Some days you'll feel free, and other days, the weight of the past will come back with full force. But in those moments, remember this: you are not alone. Every step you take toward healing is an act of bravery. Every time you choose to love yourself, even when it hurts, you're setting that inner child free bit by bit. Imagine what your life could look like if you fully embraced that child. If you could tell it, it wasn't your fault, you were never broken, you weren't the problem. Think of how your decisions, relationships, and self-perception might change. This possibility is not an unattainable dream. It's the result of confronting your deepest fears and realizing that pain doesn't define your story. It can transform it. Releasing the wounded child doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means integrating it. It means recognizing that the wounds are not a sentence, but an invitation to grow, to rebuild, to live from a place of authenticity and self-love. Because that child, once small and powerless, now has someone who can protect it. You. And with that protection, you can begin to heal the most important parts of yourself. Our beliefs shape the very fabric of our reality. They form the lens through which we see ourselves, others, and the world around us. Many of these beliefs were instilled in us during childhood, a time when our minds were most impressionable. Perhaps you grew up hearing phrases like, money doesn't grow on trees, or don't trust anyone. Or maybe you witnessed your parents struggle with their own fears, leading you to believe that life was meant to be a battle. These early experiences become the invisible maps that guide us throughout our lives, even though they no longer reflect our present reality. The problem isn't that these beliefs exist, it's that they operate on autopilot, guiding our decisions without us even realizing it. We don't question them because they become intertwined with our identity. But here's the truth: your beliefs are not set in stone. They are learned patterns, and just as you learn them, you can unlearn them. The first step in dismantling the power of a limiting belief is to recognize it. Ask yourself, what do I truly believe about myself, about others, about the world? You may discover that you hold beliefs like, I'm not good enough, success only comes through extreme sacrifice, or people always disappoint me. Write these beliefs down and look at them. As long as they remain hidden in your mind, they hold power over you, but once you bring them into the light, you begin to weaken them. The next step is to challenge them. Ask yourself, is this really true? What evidence do I have that this belief is an absolute truth? More often than not, you'll find that these beliefs are simply interpretations of past events, not irrefutable facts. For instance, if you believe that you're not enough because someone rejected you, ask yourself, does that rejection define who I am, or was it just an isolated experience? Changing a belief also means replacing it with a new one. If for years you've believed that success isn't meant for people like you, start repeating a new truth. I am capable of creating my own success. At first, it may feel like a lie, but over time, each aligned action you take will reinforce it. Remember, beliefs don't change with wishes, they change through action. Imagine for a moment how your life would transform if you could change your most limiting beliefs. What would you do differently if you truly believed you were enough? What opportunities would you seize if you saw the world as a place of endless possibilities? Life isn't a dream, it's a decision, one that begins when you choose to take control of your beliefs rather than allowing them to control you. Beliefs have power because we give them power, but we also hold the power to transform them. Every time you choose to think or act differently, you are rewriting your reality. Because in the end, it's not the world that determines your destiny, it's what you choose to believe about it. And when you choose to believe in your own ability, your worth, and your right to a fulfilling life, something magical happens. Your beliefs, like all others, start to become your reality. The subconscious mind is the hidden puppeteer of your thoughts, decisions, and actions. It's invisible and silent, yet exerts absolute control over much of your life. It operates without your consent, guiding you with unsettling precision, not because it seeks to harm you, but because it was programmed to protect you. However, many times, that protection keeps you trapped. Your subconscious is like a massive filing cabinet where every experience, emotion, and belief you've accumulated since birth is stored. From the moment you were born, even before that, it has been gathering information about the world and your place in it. Every word you heard, every look you interpreted, and every emotion you felt was recorded. And those experiences, especially the ones that occurred during moments of vulnerability, became the blueprint by which your subconscious navigates life. I recall someone telling me they didn't understand why they always ended up choosing the worst for themselves, particularly in relationships, work, and even daily decisions. They felt an internal force pushing them toward failure, as if they had an inner enemy. But this wasn't an enemy. It was their subconscious mind operating from beliefs formed during childhood, like, I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve to be happy. They didn't consciously remember these beliefs, but they were there, silently guiding every step they took. The subconscious mind functions as an autopilot. If you've ever driven to a familiar place without consciously thinking about every turn, you know how it feels. But this autopilot doesn't just control simple tasks. It also governs your emotions, fears, and reactions. Why do you feel nervous when an opportunity arises that you should celebrate? Why do you avoid love, even though you crave it? The answer lies within the subconscious, where the programs that run your life are stored. The problem with this autopilot is that it doesn't distinguish between what helps you and what limits you. It simply repeats patterns. If you learn that rejection is dangerous, your subconscious will avoid any situation where rejection could occur, even if it means sacrificing something important. If you've associated success with extreme sacrifice, it will push you to work beyond your limits, because that's what it believes you need in order to be valuable. These patterns are not coincidences. They are signs that your subconscious is following a script it learned long ago. But that script, though it may feel unchangeable, can be rewritten. The first step to freeing yourself from the dictatorship of the subconscious is to observe it. This doesn't mean trying to control it. That's impossible. It means paying attention every time you react in a way you don't understand. Stop and ask yourself, where is this coming from? If you're afraid of speaking in public, perhaps you remember a time when you were humiliated in front of others. If you struggle to trust people, maybe it stems from a betrayal you never fully processed. The subconscious holds on to these memories, not to punish you but to protect you. Yet this protection, though well-intentioned, often keeps you stuck. The next step is to challenge the programs that no longer serve you. This requires practice because the subconscious doesn't change with words, it changes through experience. If you've believed for years that you're not enough, start acting as though you are. Take small risks, celebrate your achievements, and allow people to love you. At first, it will feel uncomfortable, even false, but each time you act from a different place, you're sending a message to your subconscious. This is my new reality. Over time, that message becomes the new program. The subconscious mind also responds to repetition. Think of how many times you've told yourself, "I can't," or "I'm not capable." Each repetition reinforces that belief. But if you consciously choose to feed your mind with affirmations like, "I am enough," or "I deserve the best," you'll eventually start to change the internal narrative. Not because the words are magical, but because repetition creates new neural pathways and new thought patterns. Imagine how your life would look if you could free your subconscious from the limiting programs it's carried out for years. What if, instead of operating from fear, it functioned from trust? What if it didn't sabotage you, but propelled you toward your goals? This life isn't a fantasy, it's a possibility. But to reach it, you must face the invisible strings that have kept you trapped. The subconscious isn't your enemy, it's an ally that needs to be educated. And that education begins when you choose to look within, recognize the patterns that no longer serve you, and consciously act to change them. It won't be easy, because you're challenging systems that have been with you your entire life. But each small step toward liberation is a victory. Every time you choose a different thought or a different action, you're taking back control. The dictatorship of the subconscious doesn't have to be eternal. You have the power to transform it into a system that works for you, not against you. And when you do, you'll discover something extraordinary. You always had the ability to create a life that reflects the best of you, not the worst that you were taught. The next step in personal transformation is to challenge the beliefs that have governed your life. If you've spent years believing that others can't be trusted, ask yourself, is it really true that everyone will betray you? Take a moment to search for evidence that contradicts this idea. Perhaps you can recall times when people stood by you when you needed them most, or realize that, despite some disappointments, there have been others who have shown you loyalty. These examples might not erase your belief overnight, but they will begin to crack the foundation of your mindset, allowing a bit of light to seep through. Shifting a belief isn't an immediate process. It requires action. If you've told yourself that you're not good enough, start acting as if you are. If you believe that you don't deserve success, take a step toward a goal you've been postponing. These actions don't just challenge your beliefs, they rewrite them. Every time you do something that contradicts what you've always believed, you're teaching your mind a new way of perceiving the world and yourself. Imagine for a moment how different your life could be if you stopped seeing failure as inevitable. What if you didn't believe that love always leads to pain? What if success wasn't reserved for others, but for you as well? What could you build in your life if you broke free from these limiting beliefs? This is not a dream, but the result of becoming aware of the stories you've been telling yourself and consciously choosing to change them. The cycle of self-deception may feel powerful, but it is not unbreakable. Each time you question a belief or take a different action, you're breaking a link in that chain. At first, the change will be subtle, almost imperceptible. But in time, these small decisions will form a new pattern, a new narrative, a new reality. Beliefs are simply stories we tell ourselves, and like any story, they can be rewritten. The question is, what story will you choose to tell yourself today? Because when you choose to break the cycle of self-deception, you not only change your beliefs, but you change your life. And in that change, you will find the freedom that has always been waiting for you. This process is not always conscious. The mind has a dark art called autosuggestion, the power of repeating a lie until it becomes an unquestionable truth. It's the whisper in your mind that says, "I'm not enough," or "I always fail." At first, these words have no real foundation, but the more you repeat them, the deeper they grow, intertwining themselves into your psyche. Before long, not only do you believe them, but you live as though they are the core of your existence. This is the dark art of autosuggestion, convincing yourself of your own lies until they feel more real than any other truth. I remember someone who would always say, "I'm not good at public speaking." Whenever the opportunity arose, they would shy away with an excuse. When I asked why they believed this, they shared a story from their childhood, how once they had forgotten their words during a school presentation and were met with laughter. This moment became a scar in their mind, but the real wound was the belief that grew from it. I'm not good at this. No matter how many times they tried afterward, each failure seemed like proof that their belief was true. That's how autosuggestion works. It doesn't need huge events or solid evidence. It only needs repetition. It's a slow, silent process, but devastatingly effective. What you repeat enough becomes your reality, not because it's true, but because your mind can't distinguish between what's real and what you tell it is real. The mind, in its infinite efficiency, assumes that the words you hear, especially those you say to yourself, reflect reality and begins to look for evidence to support them. Autosuggestion doesn't always come in the form of direct thoughts. Sometimes it's more subtle, like when you see someone successful and think, that's not for people like me. Or when someone gives you a compliment and you dismiss it, telling yourself they're just being nice. These little narratives, repeated day after day, build a wall that keeps you from seeing who you truly are and what you're capable of. But why do we do this? Why do we choose to tell ourselves lies that limit us, that keep us small? The answer is often rooted in fear, the fear of failing, of rejection, of discovering that we are indeed capable, but that such power carries responsibility we fear we cannot bear. Autosuggestion becomes a defense mechanism, a way to keep ourselves safe, even if that safety is an illusion that holds us back. Ask yourself, what do I repeatedly tell myself that might not be true? Perhaps you tell yourself you're not good enough at your job, even though the evidence shows otherwise. Maybe you believe you'll never find love because you think you don't deserve it, even though others see something in you that you can't. The first step in breaking the spell of autosuggestion is to recognize it. This takes courage, because it means admitting that some of the things you believe about yourself are nothing more than lies you've been telling yourself for years. Ask yourself where these ideas came from. Who taught you to believe them? What evidence do you have that they are true? Often you'll discover that these beliefs didn't come from truth, but from moments of vulnerability when your mind tried to protect you. The next step is to replace those lies with new truths. This doesn't mean deluding yourself with empty optimism, but consciously choosing words that build rather than destroy. If you've always told yourself you're not enough, try replacing that with, I'm learning to be enough. If you've said you always fail, try, every attempt brings me closer to success. These new phrases might feel uncomfortable at first, as though you're lying to yourself. But remember, truth doesn't need to feel familiar to be real. It only needs repetition. Autosuggestion is not inherently bad. It's a tool, and like any tool, its impact depends on how you use it. If you can convince yourself of limiting lies, you can also convince yourself of liberating truths. This doesn't happen overnight, but every time you choose empowering words, you're building a new narrative, a new cycle, one that eventually becomes your reality. Imagine for a moment what your life would look like if you used this power in your favor. What if, instead of repeating your limitations, you reminded yourself of your possibilities? What if, instead of reinforcing your fears, you fed your confidence? That life is not a fantasy. It's the inevitable result of using autosuggestion consciously and deliberately. The metamorphosis of a believer is not an instant transformation. It's more like the slow awakening of a caterpillar that doesn't yet know it's becoming a butterfly. The metamorphosis is a process of deconstruction, reconstruction, and rebirth, where each layer of what you thought you were falls away to reveal what you've always been, but never allowed yourself to discover. It begins with a simple question. What if I'm not who I think I am? This question, small but powerful, holds the seed of doubt, and doubt is the natural enemy of limiting beliefs. When you begin to question what you once took for granted, something inside you shifts. It's uncomfortable, even terrifying, because it means facing the possibility that your certainties were not truths, but chains. The first cracks in your old ideas may seem insignificant, but each new question and each new experience that contradicts your former beliefs widens those cracks. Eventually, what once seemed immovable will crumble. But deconstruction alone is not enough. You must rebuild, and this is where many falter. The emptiness that remains after a belief falls can be terrifying. It's easier to cling to the familiar, even if it hurts, than to face the uncertainty of the unknown. But that emptiness is not a punishment. It's an invitation. It's the space where you get to choose who you want to be and what you want to believe. Ask yourself, what kind of life do I want to create? What beliefs do I need to sustain it? Perhaps you'll realize you want to believe in your ability to achieve great things, even if you once told yourself the opposite. Perhaps you'll adopt the belief that love is not something to be earned, but something you deserve. These new beliefs won't appear out of nowhere. They must be cultivated, nourished, and repeated. Just as your old beliefs took root through repetition, so too will the new ones. The rebirth of the believer is not just a change of ideas, it's a change of identity. No longer are you the person driven by inherited or imposed narratives. Now you're someone who consciously chooses to act from a place of power, not fear. But this rebirth requires action. It's not enough to think differently. You must live differently. Each decision you make from your new beliefs reinforces the metamorphosis. Every small act of courage, every time you choose trust over doubt, is a declaration of who you are now. Imagine for a moment what your life would be like if you could fully release the beliefs that have held you back. If you could live authentically, without fear of judgment, without constantly trying to prove your worth. That life is not an unreachable dream. It's the natural consequence of transforming your belief system. But don't be mistaken. The metamorphosis is not a destination. It's a continuous process, a journey where you'll constantly encounter new ideas, new experiences, and new versions of yourself. Every time you face a challenge, every time you dare to dream bigger, you are being called to another transformation. Because life is not static, and neither are you. The metamorphosis of the believer is not just about changing your thoughts, it's about changing how you live, how you love, and how you relate to yourself and the world. It's a reminder that you are not defined by what you once believed, but by what you choose to believe now. And that choice, though it may seem small, has the power to transform not only your life, but also your perception of what is possible. It is the first step toward breaking the mental walls that confine you. I remember a conversation with someone who told me, "I feel trapped, but I don't know why." Such a simple phrase, yet it holds a universe of pain. I asked, "What is holding you back?" He paused, thinking for a moment before responding, "I think it's me." While this answer seemed obvious, it marked the beginning of something profound. It wasn't him that was holding him back, but the mental walls he had built over the years, walls constructed from fear of failure, self-doubt, and the belief that he wasn't enough. These mental walls are not built overnight. They are constructed slowly, one brick at a time. Each time someone told you that you couldn't, and you believed them, you placed another brick. With each failure you interpreted as evidence of your own inadequacy, you added another layer. Every time you chose the safe path over the risky one, you reinforced these walls. After years of this, these walls become so high and so thick that they seem impenetrable. But here's the truth, those walls don't want you to discover. They aren't as strong as they appear. They were built by you, and therefore they can be torn down by you. The first step to breaking them down is recognizing they exist. Ask yourself, what beliefs do I hold about myself that limit me? Perhaps you believe you're not smart enough, or that success is reserved for others, or that love always leads to pain. These beliefs are not inherent to who you are. They are stories you learned, absorbed from your environment, from past experiences, and from the words of others. As long as you don't question them, they will continue to control your life. The most important question you can ask yourself is, where do these beliefs come from? You might realize that you've always felt incapable because someone close to you pointed out your mistakes when you were young. Perhaps you're afraid of rejection because you were once humiliated, and that experience left a scar that never healed. These beliefs didn't emerge out of nowhere. They have roots. By identifying these roots, you begin to weaken the walls. Breaking down mental walls isn't an act of brute force. It's an act of courage. You don't need to bring them down all at once. You simply need to start making cracks in them. Every time you challenge a limiting belief, you create a crack. If you've always believed you can't try something small that proves otherwise, if you think you don't deserve love, open up just a little to someone who cares. These actions, though they may seem insignificant, have a profound impact because every time you act against your limiting beliefs, you take away their power. The process won't be comfortable. There will be times when you'll want to return to what's familiar, because even the most painful prison can feel safe if it's the only thing you know. But discomfort is a part of change. Whenever you feel fear, remember that it's not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that you're stepping into unknown territory. And it's in the unknown that transformation happens. Imagine for a moment what your life would be like without those walls. What would you do if your doubts, your fears, and your limiting beliefs didn't hold you back? That life isn't some unreachable dream. It's a real possibility that begins the moment you decide to strike the first blow against those walls. It doesn't matter if that blow is small. What matters is that it's conscious and intentional, a reminder that you have the power to choose. Breaking down these walls is not just an act of liberation, it's an act of self-love. It's telling yourself that you deserve more, that you are not defined by your past experiences, that you have the right to be who you truly are. And when those walls fall, you don't just discover a wider world, you discover yourself. You find yourself free, whole, and capable. The art of deconstruction is about dismantling the false identity you've built. The identity you carry isn't always the one that truly belongs to you. Often, it's a collage of expectations, fears, and beliefs you've accumulated over the years. What you call yourself is actually a mask, a construct designed to fit in, to protect, and to give you a sense of security in a world that often feels chaotic. But here's the truth that few are brave enough to face. That identity, no matter how real it may seem, could be a lie. Deconstruction is not a gentle or comfortable process. It's like tearing down a house you've believed to be your home all your life. Each layer you remove reveals something you didn't know was there, something you may have preferred to ignore. But it's only by undoing what isn't authentic that you can discover what you really are. I remember someone who, after years of living a life that seemed perfect on the outside, told me, "I don't know who I really am. Everything I do seems designed to please others." Their career, their relationships, and even their dreams weren't their own. They were reflections of what others expected from them. That realization was devastating at first, because it meant admitting that they had been living a borrowed life. But it was also the first step towards something more authentic. The art of deconstruction begins with a simple yet powerful question. Who am I, really? This question doesn't seek immediate or easy answers. It seeks truth. And when you face that truth, it can be uncomfortable. You may discover that you've been acting to gain approval, that you've hidden your true desires because you feared judgment, or that you adopted beliefs that aren't yours because it was easier to follow the path laid out by others. The false identity is built on the experiences that have shaped you. Perhaps someone told you that you were too much of a dreamer, and so you decided you had to be more realistic. Maybe you were hurt in a relationship, and you learned to shut yourself off from love. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where vulnerability was seen as weakness, and so you built armor to protect yourself. Each of these experiences added a brick to the identity you now wear. A false identity created not to make you happy, but to help you survive. The first step to dismantling that false identity is to recognize the bricks that hold it together. Ask yourself, what do I believe about myself that might not be true? Perhaps you believe you're not good enough, that you don't deserve success, or that you always have to be strong for others. These beliefs are not your essence. They are stories you've learned to tell yourself in order to cope with the world. Once you identify these beliefs, the next step is to question them. Ask yourself, where did this idea come from? Who taught me this? What evidence do I have that it's true? Often, you'll find that these ideas didn't come from you at all. They came from others. Your parents, society, or painful experiences you never processed. When you realize these beliefs are not yours, you begin to reclaim your power. Deconstruction doesn't mean destroying everything you are. It means letting go of what isn't authentic in order to uncover what's always been there. Imagine that your identity is like a statue covered in layers of old paint. Each layer represents a belief, an expectation, a fear. As you peel those layers away, you begin to see the original shape, the essence that's always been beneath. This process isn't linear or immediate. There will be moments when you feel lost because, in letting go of the false, you're confronted with emptiness. But that emptiness is not something to fear. It's space for creation. It's the blank canvas where you can begin to draw an identity that truly reflects who you are. The key to dismantling the false identity is to act from a place of authenticity. Even if you don't yet know what that feels like, ask yourself, if I had no fear, what would I do? If I wasn't trying to please anyone, how would I live? Every time you choose to be honest with yourself, every time you make a decision based on what you truly want instead of what others expect, you're breaking down another brick of the false identity. Imagine for a moment what your life would be like without that mask. What would it be like to live without the pressure to be perfect, without the weight of others' expectations, without the fear of judgment? That life isn't an unattainable dream. It's a real possibility that begins the moment you choose to let go of what's inauthentic. It won't be easy. The false identity, no matter how limited, feels safe. But every small act of courage, every moment in which you choose to be yourself, is a step toward freedom. The art of deconstruction isn't about destroying who you are. It's about liberating yourself. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who you should be. Because beneath all the layers, beneath all the stories you've told yourself, is your essence. And that essence doesn't need approval, validation, or masks. It just needs to be recognized. One of the most effective methods for changing your life is to rewire your subconscious. Your mind responds powerfully to the feelings and images you give it, especially your subconscious. Your ability to effect change increases with the clarity and specificity of your life's goal. However, feeling a different life is more important than only picturing it. With all of your heart, picture what it would be like to live a life filled with prosperity, self-assurance, or self-love. Your subconscious receives a clear message when you envision with both your eyes and your emotions, "This is the life I want to lead." Consistency is crucial as always. In order to adapt your attitude to your new aspirations, your mind will begin to match your thoughts and actions with that picture. But visualization alone is not enough. The words you speak to yourself play a vital role in this transformation. Every time you tell yourself that you can't do something, or that you always fail, you are reinforcing the old programming. Your internal dialogue shapes your reality. To reprogram your mind, begin changing your self-talk, even if it doesn't feel true at first. Phrases like "I'm learning" or "I'm in the process of improving" are powerful because they acknowledge your ability to change without denying where you currently are. Change doesn't happen solely in your mind, it requires action. Every time you make a decision that aligns with your new beliefs, you are reinforcing the new program. If, for instance, you decide to take the mic and utter a few things, even if you've always felt you can't speak in front of an audience, you are effectively telling your subconscious that this is feasible. Thoughts are transformed into reality through action. Reprogramming is a lengthy and non-linear process. You will occasionally feel as though you are trapped in your old habits. However, this does not imply that you are not improving. Every little adjustment, every idea you question, and every action you perform from a different angle is a step in the right direction. Maintaining consistency is crucial. It doesn't matter how many times you make mistakes as long as you keep going. Imagine for a moment how your life would change if you could completely reprogram your subconscious. If, instead of making decisions from a place of fear, you made them from a place of confidence, your choices weren't dictated by past wounds, but by the vision of the life you want to create. This life isn't a dream, it's a real possibility. And it begins with one simple but powerful act: consciously choosing what you allow into your mind. The science of change may not seem magical, but its results often appear that way. When you reprogram your subconscious, you don't just change how you think, you change how you live. And in that change, you discover that you've always had the power to create a life that reflects not your fears but your dreams. The mind, contrary to what many believe, isn't your jailer. It's your most powerful tool. It all depends on how you choose to use it. The alchemy of thought is about transforming fear into empowering beliefs. Fear is like a shadow, always a step behind, silent but constant. No matter how fast you run, it always seems to follow. Yet fear has a peculiar quality. It's not as solid as it seems. It's malleable, like metal waiting to be shaped in the fire, and therein lies its magic. When you choose to face it instead of running, something extraordinary happens. It begins to dissolve. Fear, like all thoughts, has no intrinsic power. The power it holds is the one you give it by believing in it. Ask yourself, where does this fear come from? Is it truly mine, or did I inherit it from someone else? Often, fears are nothing more than echoes of past voices, a comment from a parent, a taunt in school, a failure you interpreted as a reflection of your identity. Transforming fear into an empowering belief isn't an instant process, but it's possible. The first step is to recognize the story you're telling yourself. If you fear failure, you probably tell yourself, if I fail, I'm not enough. But that story isn't truth, it's an interpretation. And like all interpretations, it can be rewritten. What if, instead of seeing failure as a sign of your inadequacy, you viewed it as a lesson? What if you told yourself that every mistake is a step toward growth? This simple rewording has the power to change everything. The second step is to actively challenge your fear. This doesn't mean jumping into the unknown without preparation, but rather taking small risks that contradict your limiting beliefs. If you fear rejection, start by sharing an idea with a group, asking a question you normally wouldn't, or expressing an opinion you typically keep silent. Each time you face your fear, you're sending a message to your mind. This doesn't control me. And with every small act of courage, you're reshaping the fear like a hammer shaping hot metal. The alchemy of thought isn't just about challenging your fears, though. It's also about imagining who you could become without them. Close your eyes and ask yourself, who would I be if this fear didn't hold me back? Maybe you'd see yourself speaking with confidence, chasing your dreams, or opening your heart without hesitation. That image isn't a fantasy. It's a real possibility. And every time you visualize it, you're teaching your mind a new way of being. Your subconscious, which once feared change, begins to adapt to this new vision because it seeks congruence. What you imagine with enough intensity and emotion begins to feel real. But change doesn't only happen in your mind, it requires action. Every time you make a decision from a place of empowerment instead of fear, you're reinforcing your new beliefs. Not everything will go as planned, but even the smallest progress is a victory. Every time you choose courage over fear, you're reprogramming your mind and reminding it that fear no longer gets to write your story. Fear is a powerful tool when you understand it. Instead of seeing it as an enemy, you can use it as a signal. Where there is fear, there is growth waiting for you. Where there is resistance, there is potential. Imagine how your life would look if, each time fear arose, you saw it as an opportunity rather than a barrier. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but with every rewritten thought and every brave action, you are moving closer to a version of yourself who not only faces fear, but uses it to grow. In the alchemy of thought, it's not about eliminating fear, it's about transforming it. It's about looking it in the eye and saying, I won't let this control me. And in that act, you discover something profound. Fear was never bigger than you. It only seemed that way because you fed it for so long. But now, with every step toward freedom, you're forging a new identity, one that doesn't just face fear, but turns it into beliefs that elevate you instead of holding you back. And in that process, you realize that you've always had the power to turn any shadow into light. Rebirth is not a sudden burst of magic, nor a moment that changes everything overnight. It's a profound journey, an internal shift that begins when you decide to leave behind who you once were, to become who you were always meant to be. It is the point where you release the chains of your past, where you embrace your scars as symbols of survival and walk forward with your head held high, knowing that now you are the author of your own story. Imagine standing before a mountain, one that you've always seen from below, towering and seemingly unreachable. For years you watched it with fear, convinced that you could never scale its peaks. But then, something changed. Perhaps it was a conversation, a failure, or simply the exhaustion of feeling small in its shadow. That day, you took your first step. The climb was steep, filled with obstacles and moments where you doubted your strength. Yet, you pressed on. And now, here you are, at the summit, gazing down at the world from a perspective you once thought impossible. That is rebirth, looking back and realizing that the person who started the journey is no longer the same one who arrived. Rebirth doesn't begin with a dramatic surge of courage. It starts with a whisper, a silent but powerful decision. It is the moment when you say, "I don't want to live like this anymore." No matter how long you've been trapped in fear, doubt, or limiting beliefs, that tiny flicker of clarity is the spark that ignites the fire of change. I remember someone telling me how, for years, they lived with an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. Every achievement filled them with pride, but only for a moment, before the voice inside their head would whisper, "It's not enough. You're not enough." That voice followed them for years until one day, while standing alone in front of a mirror, they said, "Enough." They didn't fully understand what that meant, but it was the beginning of something new. It was the moment they decided they would no longer be enslaved by their own insecurities. Rebirth is not a destination. It is a constant journey. Every day when you choose to let go of an old belief, when you dare to take a risk, or when you choose to love yourself just a little more, you are reborn. But this process isn't linear, nor is it perfect. There will be days when you feel like you're moving backward, moments when the shadows of the past try to pull you back. These days are not signs of failure. They are reminders that you are alive, that you are growing. Because rebirth doesn't mean never falling. It means rising again each time, stronger than before. Rebirth also means accepting that you don't have to do it alone. Sometimes you'll need the support of others, an encouraging word, a helping hand, a glance that reminds you that you are not alone. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the bridge that connects souls. When you allow others to see your wounds, you discover that many of them have scars of their own, and in that shared experience you find the strength to keep moving forward. The most powerful rebirth happens when you realize that you don't need to be perfect to deserve love, success, or happiness. For so long, you believed that you had to change to become worthy, that you had to meet an impossible standard to feel whole. Now, you know that you've always been enough even when you didn't feel it. That is the gift of rebirth. It doesn't turn you into someone new. It reconnects you with who you've always been. Rebirth is also an act of creation. Once you let go of what no longer serves you, you make space for something new. Ask yourself, what do I want for my life? What kind of life do I want to build? There are no limits to what you can dream because now you understand that the chains that once held you were illusions. You are free to imagine, to explore, to create. What would your life look like if you lived from this place of rebirth? If every decision you made was guided not by fear, but by love? If every step you took was aligned with your values, your dreams, your truth? That life is not an unreachable fantasy. It is a reality that's already within your grasp. You only need to choose it, over and over again. Rebirth is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of a new one. It is the opportunity to live authentically, to embrace both your light and your darkness, and to walk with the certainty that every step you take is an act of courage. Because now you understand that you are not defined by your past but by the choices you make today. Imagine that you've been given a blank canvas, an empty lot where you can build whatever you desire. There are no restrictions, no blueprints imposed by others, only the infinite possibility to create something that reflects who you are. But here's the challenge. For years you've lived in a house that wasn't yours, a house made of borrowed beliefs, other people's expectations, fears, and limitations you never questioned. Now, standing before this empty space, a crucial question arises. What kind of life do I want to build? Becoming the architect of your own life is not an easy task. It requires courage, patience, and, most importantly, clarity. You can't build something new without first understanding that you need to tear down what's old. It's like looking at a worn-out structure. The walls are fragile, but you continue living in it because it's all you've ever known. Perhaps these walls represent beliefs like, I don't deserve success, or love always hurts. Before you can create something new, you must dismantle what no longer serves you. To do this, you need a plan. The first step in this process is to identify the beliefs that have shaped your life so far. Ask yourself, what do I think about myself, others, and the world? You may discover that you've lived for years under the belief that money is bad, or that you can only be happy if you meet certain expectations. These beliefs, though seemingly harmless, are the foundation of your old life, and as long as you don't question them, they will continue to dictate everything you do. But here's the truth that transforms everything. Your beliefs are not set in stone. They are like bricks, and you have the power to replace them. Every time you question a belief, you remove an old brick and place a new one. If for years you believe success only comes with extreme sacrifice, you can start to build a new belief, that success can be fulfilling and balanced. If you've always told yourself that you're not enough, replace that thought with, I am capable and deserving of the best. This process doesn't happen overnight, but with every conscious thought, you're redesigning your life. Once you start working on your beliefs, the next step is to act in accordance with them. It's not enough to think differently, you need to live differently. If you believe you deserve love, start by giving that love to yourself. If you believe you're capable of achieving great things, step out of your comfort zone and take actions that reflect that confidence. Every action is another brick in the foundation of your new life. As you begin to create this new life, it's essential to dream authentically. Many times the dreams we pursue are not truly ours. They are reflections of what others have told us we should want. Maybe someone told you that success means having a stable job, a big house, and a perfect family. But what if that's not what you truly desire? Ask yourself, what do I want for myself, not because someone else expects it, but because it resonates with who I truly am. This is the moment to take charge of your life and make it your own, rather than allowing other people's expectations to guide you. For a moment, picture yourself creating a life that genuinely embodies who you are, where every choice you make is in line with your values, where each step you take brings you one step closer to your goals, and where you no longer feel pressured to fit into preconceived notions. This life isn't just a fantasy. The decision to take charge of your own destiny is the first step toward realizing this possibility. As an architect, you also have to understand that things won't always be flawless. Errors will occur in the design, and there will be times when you have to start over from scratch. These incidents are teaching moments rather than failures. Every error helps you refine your vision and gain a better understanding of your true needs and desires. Surrounding yourself with individuals who encourage your path is another aspect of becoming the architect of your life. Consider how exhausting, if not impossible, it would be to attempt such a structure by yourself. It's the same in life. Individuals who appreciate your process, raise you up when you feel like you can't continue alone, and support you when you doubt yourself are the individuals you need to surround yourself with. The foundation of your new structure is made up of these individuals. Finally, remember that building your life doesn't have a final destination. There will always be something more to adjust, something new to add. This is not a journey that ends. It's a journey to enjoy. Each day you choose to act from your own beliefs, and each time you make a decision aligned with your truth, you are strengthening the foundation of an authentic and meaningful life. When you become the architect of your life, you discover something extraordinary. You always had the power to design your own path. You just needed to let go of the beliefs of others to see it. And now, with every brick you place, with every step you take, you are building something not only beautiful, but profoundly your own. And in that process you find not just freedom, but a satisfaction that no borrowed life could ever offer. This is your moment to create, to dream, and to live fully. Now you know that true power doesn't lie in what others expect of you, but in what you choose to build from your soul. In the journey of mental freedom, there is a crucial lesson to understand: letting go of the need to control the outcome. We often carry the illusion that we must ensure the success of others, but this is not our responsibility. The seeds we plant through our words and actions might grow in ways we cannot predict. Some will take what we share and create profound change in their lives, while others may ignore it completely. But your legacy is not measured by the number of lives you change. It is defined by the truth you share. True inspiration comes from a place of humility, not from a lofty pedestal. You don't need to be perfect to guide others. All you need is authenticity. Share your struggles, your doubts, and your mistakes. It is in those raw stories where others find hope, not in unattainable perfection, but in shared humanity. You inspire others, not by pretending to have all the answers, but by demonstrating that even amidst uncertainty, you continue to walk forward. The legacy of a free mind is not built on applause or recognition. It is found in the quiet moments when someone hears your words and decides to take a step toward their own freedom. It is the silent impact of living your truth and showing others that breaking the chains that bind us is possible. However, for that legacy to endure, you must protect your freedom. Only when you are whole can you give without draining yourself, and inspire without becoming shackled. The subconscious mind is vast and mysterious, a deep ocean where secrets rarely rise to the surface. This part of the mind is not your enemy, though it may have seemed that way for a long time. Like a wild horse galloping through the fields, it is driven by instincts, memories, and beliefs that you have either consciously or unconsciously fed. Being the master of your subconscious doesn't mean controlling it with force. It means understanding its language, navigating its currents, and eventually transforming it into an ally. I remember the moment I realized that my mind was not fully under my control. It was an ordinary day, and yet every thought carried a weight that I couldn't ignore: fears, doubts, and old stories of inadequacy. These thoughts were not new. They had been with me for years, quietly shaping my life. That day, something clicked. I realized I wasn't living according to my own will, but according to a program I had never questioned. The subconscious is not a villain, but neither is it an obedient servant. It is more like a guardian holding on to what it deems sacred, even if what it holds sacred is fear or doubt. Every intense experience, every repeated word, becomes a brick in the structure of your mind. Over time, this structure forms a prison. But here's the truth that changes everything. If you built those walls, you can tear them down. Ask yourself, what stories does my subconscious live by that are no longer true? Perhaps you believe success requires suffering because you saw your parents work themselves to exhaustion, or maybe you think love always ends in pain because of past abandonment. These beliefs are not yours by nature. They are narratives your subconscious adopted for protection. What was once a survival mechanism is now a barrier limiting your life. The key to mastering your subconscious is awareness. You cannot change what you do not see. Observe your thoughts not as a judge, but as an explorer. Whenever something holds you back or causes anxiety, ask yourself, where is this coming from? Is this truly mine? Or did I adopt it from someone else? This act of observation is not easy, because the subconscious operates with subtlety. It doesn't shout, it whispers. But as you begin to listen, you'll uncover patterns that you previously overlooked. Reprogramming the subconscious is not a one-day task, but it is entirely possible. The most powerful tool for doing so is repetition. If, for years, you have told yourself that you are not enough, your subconscious has accepted that as absolute truth. But if you begin to feed your mind thoughts that reflect your worth, something begins to change. Every time you say, I am capable, I deserve the best, you are placing a new brick in the foundation of your mind. At first, these words may feel strange, even false, but the subconscious does not distinguish between what is real and what is repeatedly told to it. It simply absorbs what it hears often. Visualization is another powerful tool. Your subconscious responds far more to images than words. Imagine, in vivid detail, the life you want to create. Don't just see it, feel it. Feel what it's like to wake up every day with purpose, to live with confidence, love, and abundance. Each time you visualize with emotion, you send a clear message to your subconscious. This is what I want to experience. And as the subconscious seeks coherence, it will begin aligning your thoughts and actions with that vision. But mastering your subconscious also requires action. Every positive thought needs to be backed by a decision, a step, a movement. If you've always told yourself that you're not good at public speaking, Break that pattern by raising your hand in a meeting. If you believe you don't deserve success, take a small step toward a long-postponed goal. These actions don't just reinforce your new beliefs, they turn them into reality. The path to mastering the subconscious is not linear. There will be days when the old patterns resurface strongly, when doubts and fears occupy the center of your mind. But even on those days, remember this. Each time you consciously choose a thought, each time you take an action aligned with your purpose, you are making progress. To be the master of your subconscious doesn't mean eliminating the shadows. It means learning to walk with them without letting them stop you. Imagine for a moment how your life would change if you could direct your mind instead of being directed by it. If you could wake up every day knowing that your thoughts are aligned with your dreams, and that your decisions are not influenced by old fears, but guided by a vision of what is possible. That life is not a distant dream, it is a choice you make each time you decide to be conscious, each time you choose to rewrite the stories that no longer serve you. The subconscious is not your master, it is your most powerful tool. When you learn to use it, you discover something extraordinary. You always had the power to design your life, you just needed to reclaim it. Now is your moment, not to eliminate who you are, but to redirect, to take the reins and to build from a place of intention. Being the master of your subconscious means freeing it to work in your favor. And in that freedom, you will find the deepest truth of who you really are. The end of the slave is the beginning of the creator.